There comes a time, a sharp, unforgettable moment, when you find yourself standing face to face with disrespect. Maybe it's in the heat of a conversation. Maybe it's in the quiet sting of someone's words. In that instant, everything inside of you screams to fight back. Your heart races, your pride burns, and your tongue aches to release words sharp enough to cut like a blade. You know exactly what to say to hit where it hurts. But pause, just for a second. Because here's what you need to understand. Silence is sometimes the sharpest weapon you can wield. You don't always need to speak to make someone feel the weight of their actions. In fact, silence can be louder than any words you could ever shout. Especially when the disrespect comes from someone close, family, friends, people who should know better. That's when the temptation hits hardest. You see, the enemy wants to drag you into a battlefield where anger becomes your weapon and bitterness becomes your banner. But you weren't made for that kind of fight. You were made to rise. You were made to choose calm when everything in you wants to storm. Because silence, righteous, wise silence, can pierce deeper than shouting ever could. It unsettles the arrogant. It stirs the soul. It speaks in a language the heart cannot ignore. There's a quiet power that comes from knowing who you are. When you know your worth. When you remember that the God who created you didn't design you to be a doormat for anyone's ego. You don't feel the need to shout. You don't need to prove yourself to people who have already chosen not to see you clearly. You simply stand. You breathe. And in your silence, you say, I am not who you say I am. I am who God says I am. Yes, it's hard, especially when the disrespect cuts deep because it comes from the people you love. When strangers hurt you, it stings but fades. But when the wounds come from your own blood, your own circle, that's a different kind of pain. Still, I'm asking you, don't give them the reaction they came for, because your silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And wisdom will take you farther than retaliation ever will. Think about this. Jesus stood silent before Pilate. He stayed silent when they mocked him, spit on him, humiliated him. He didn't flinch. He didn't fight for approval. He knew who he was. He stood rooted in truth. And truth never has to beg to be believed, it simply stands. That same unshakable strength lives in you. When you're insulted, mocked, or belittled, don't rush to speak. Instead, rush to discern. Rush to pause. Ask yourself, is this worth my peace? If they wanted to understand you, they would have asked. If they wanted to love you, they would have listened. When they choose disrespect, let them sit in the echo of your silence. Let them talk to themselves while you keep walking. Keep living. Keep building. Because nothing shakes a person more than realizing they no longer have the power to disturb your peace. People who aren't at peace within themselves will always try to provoke you. Don't let their storm enter your home. Don't let their noise become your soundtrack. You may feel the urge to speak, to set them straight, but let me tell you, the best place to put people like that is outside the walls of your heart. And when you choose silence, it's not because you didn't hear them. It's because you've decided their words aren't worthy anchors for your spirit. That's power, even when it's family. Especially when it's family, sometimes people will use your love as permission to mistreat you. But listen closely. You can love them and still create distance. You can forgive them and still say nothing. You can honor your parents, your siblings, your relatives, and still protect your peace if they keep bringing chaos. You are not called to carry emotional abuse disguised as family loyalty. You are called to walk in truth, in grace, and in freedom. Some of you are waiting for apologies that may never come. And that's okay. You don't need their apology to heal. You need peace. You need to let God be your defender. You don't have to sink to their level just to feel seen. Let them wonder why you stayed silent. Let them question why you didn't flinch, why you didn't chase them down with angry words. Let them feel the regret in the space you left behind and the echo of your absence. And when they come back, and some will, you won't need to say, I told you so. You won't need to prove anything. You'll already be standing, in peace, wrapped in dignity, unshaken. Because silence, when it comes from strength and is guided by God, always speaks louder than pride. Let your silence remind them they mishandled someone who mastered staying calm while they lost control. There's a kind of power that doesn't need to shout, a strength that stands tall without demanding to be seen. And when a rude person tries to humiliate you, when they throw their words like stones, remember this. What carries the most weight is not the argument you make, but the respect you give yourself. Self-respect speaks volumes. It shows in your posture, in your stillness, in your refusal to entertain their immaturity. Some people expect you to explode. They're counting on it, but when you hold your ground with grace, when you stay poised while they crumble, it shakes them to their core. Because when you don't match their energy, when you refuse to shrink, you rise, and your rise forces them to face their own brokenness. People who go out of their way to be cruel are usually screaming from their own confusion. They don't feel in control, so they try to control you. But when you know who you are, when you respect yourself, you no longer let broken people define your worth. They might say you've changed. They might call you arrogant. But no, you've just decided to stop shrinking to make them comfortable. You're no longer fighting to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is simply, "That's not how I allow people to speak to me." Calm, clear, no yelling, no threats, just truth. And then you walk away, not because you're weak, but because you know. There's nothing holy about staying where you're not honored. You're not seeking their approval. You're not begging for their apology. You're standing in self-respect, reminding them, and maybe even reminding yourself, what true dignity looks like. There's a divine dignity in knowing your worth. It doesn't need to shout. It simply walks into the room and others feel it. That's what happens when your confidence comes from within, not from your job. Not your status, not how many friends you have, but from the unshakable truth that God made you with purpose. On purpose, for a purpose. You don't need permission to walk in that truth. You don't need the approval of the rude uncle, the jealous cousin, the bitter coworker, or the former friend who forgot how to be one. When they throw shade, when they try to embarrass you, remember who you are. When you speak from that place, your words won't sound like revenge, they'll sound like boundaries, and boundaries are a form of love for them. And love for yourself. Yes, it hurts when people you trusted twist your kindness into weakness. Let them misunderstand you. Let them mislabel you. You're not responsible for their confusion, you're responsible for how you carry your growth. And never let anyone, even family, make you feel guilty for respecting yourself. Just because someone helped bring you into this world doesn't mean they have the right to tear you down with their words. Blood may connect us, but it doesn't give anyone a license to damage our soul. You can honor people without letting them dishonor you. You can love them, but love them from a safe distance. You can stand in front of them and calmly declare, "This version of me no longer tolerates disrespect. I only wish you could meet this version without feeling threatened by its strength." The hard truth is, your growth will expose the broken places in people that they've never healed from. They will react. They will try to pull you back into old cycles, old arguments, old habits that you've already outgrown. But you're not going back there. You've come too far to shrink again. You've traveled too far in your journey to waste energy proving yourself to people who don't even see themselves clearly. So, let your life speak for you. Let your walk be louder than your words. And when they try to provoke you, you won't need to shout. You won't need to defend. Your steady presence will be enough. You don't owe anyone a breakdown just to prove you care. You don't owe anyone your silence when the moment demands truth, and you certainly don't owe anyone access to your peace if they insist on bringing chaos. The most powerful thing you can do is respect yourself so deeply that people either rise to meet you, or fall away on their own. And if they walk away because you finally chose to stand up, let them leave. You didn't lose anything. You finally gained yourself. There's a dangerous lie floating in this world, that if you're kind, you must be weak. That if you extend grace, you must be an easy target. That if you don't retaliate when disrespected, you must not know how to defend yourself. But here's the truth. Kindness is not weakness. Kindness is strength under control. And control doesn't mean silence out of fear. It's silence rooted in wisdom. It's the ability to choose your battles. When someone disrespects you, especially someone close like family, your natural reflex may be to lash out, to defend your honor, to throw words that cut just as deep as theirs. But there's another voice inside you, one quieter but far stronger. It says, "Stay calm. Stay steady. Let me handle this." Because the strength God gives you isn't loud. It isn't reckless. It isn't about proving your point. It's about being right even when others expect you to be wrong. There is power in being able to look someone in the eye, someone who just disrespected you, and say, not with rage, not with sarcasm, but with calm, firm truth, I don't allow anyone to speak to me like that. Not even family. That sentence carries weight because it's not born from anger, it comes from identity. It says, I know who I am. I know what I deserve. And this is beneath both. Let's be clear. Setting boundaries isn't pride. Protecting your peace isn't arrogance. Refusing to carry someone else's dysfunction is not wrong. The enemy would love for you to believe that keeping peace means letting people trample your soul. But peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of truth, even in the middle of it. Kindness without boundaries is not kindness. It's self-neglect, and God never asked you to destroy yourself for the comfort of others. He never told you to silently endure curses, humiliation, and disrespect just to preserve an illusion of unity. There comes a time when you must speak, not to attack, but to say with clarity, this stops here. Yes, it's complicated when the disrespect comes from those you love. It's painful when the same hands that once held you now push you aside. When the same voices that once cheered for you now cut you down. But it takes far more strength to be kind than it does to be cruel. Anyone can explode, anyone can tear down, but it takes a spirit grounded in God to stand firm, to speak gently, and to correct firmly, without crushing. That's real maturity. That's real power. Some will mistake your silence for approval. Some will misinterpret your mercy as submission. But eventually, they'll see. Because there will come a moment when you stand, not with yelling, not with rage, but with truth. And in that moment, they'll realize you were never afraid of them. You were simply giving them time to recognize their own wrong before you closed the door. You can forgive someone and still say, you don't get to talk to me like that again. You can love someone deeply and still say, this behavior cannot continue. That's not bitterness. That's clarity. That's you saying, I won't shrink to make you feel taller. That's you choosing your mental, emotional, and spiritual health over being liked, over being accepted, over being quiet just to keep a fragile peace that never really existed. And if they get upset, let them. If they call you cold, let them. If they say you change, good, because the only ones who will be bothered by your voice are those who benefited from your silence. The ones who got comfortable dishonoring you will feel most threatened when you start honoring yourself. Listen to me. Kindness rooted in truth will always win. It may not look like victory at first. It might look like distance. It might look like losing people. But what you gain is worth far more: peace, clarity, integrity. And if their hearts soften someday, they will remember, not your anger, not your revenge, but your grace, your boundaries, your dignity. Some of the strongest things you'll ever say will be said calmly. Some of your most powerful moments will be wrapped in silence, followed by one clear sentence that draws the line in love. And when they cross that line again, you won't yell, you'll walk. Because that's what people of strength do. They don't stay in spaces where they're disrespected just to prove how much they can endure. They leave to prove how much they've grown. So when someone comes at you sideways, when their words are sharp, when their tone is toxic, don't fight fire with fire. Fight it with water, with wisdom, with the quiet authority to say, that doesn't work on me anymore. And then walk away, with your peace still intact. Some people test you, not to find truth, but to gain control. They poke your wounds. They bring up your past. They question your worth, not because they care, but because their pride needs a reaction. But when you refuse to react, when you stay calm, it disarms them, it confuses them, because they're used to people whose peace performs. They're not used to someone who can see through the noise and remain steady. The enemy thrives on distraction. He wants you spinning in circles, defending yourself, responding to every insult, trying to fix every false story. But when you realize not every insult deserves your attention, not every comment deserves your energy, you start walking differently. You stop reacting. You start responding. And sometimes, the most powerful response is no response at all. There's a silence that isn't weak, it's powerful. It's the silence of someone who is no longer available for emotional manipulation. The silence of someone who's outgrown the need to win every argument. The silence of someone anchored in God's approval, no longer chasing man's applause. That kind of silence speaks volumes. It says, I don't need to explain myself to those committed to misunderstanding me. Some people are addicted to chaos. When they can't find peace, they'll try to destroy yours. And if you're not careful, you'll be dragged into battles God never called you to fight. You'll find yourself defending yourself to people who don't even value the truth. That's not your responsibility. That's not your assignment. Your job is to walk in truth. Even when it's quiet, your job is to protect your peace, even when it costs you people. There's a powerful shift that happens when you refuse to engage. When someone tries to bait you into an argument and you calmly say, "I'm not having this conversation with you." Not because you're afraid, but because you've already walked that road, and you're not going back. Let them say you've changed. That's what growth looks like. It looks like choosing your response instead of being controlled by their disrespect. It looks like sitting in the same room with someone who hurt you and realizing you don't even need to retaliate anymore. That's healing. That's maturity. That's God working in your heart. Strength isn't always about standing tall and shouting, "You will not disrespect me." Sometimes, it's about sitting still and letting your peace be the loudest thing in the room. When you stop chasing their approval, they're left to sit with their own behavior. And that's when conviction comes, not from your words, but from your restraint. Your silence becomes a mirror and they have no choice but to face themselves. That's not to say you should always stay silent. There will be moments when you must speak. But when you do, speak from authority, not insecurity. Speak from confidence, not chaos. Say what needs to be said, once, and then move forward. You've got too much purpose, too much to build, too many people to bless to let someone's disrespect derail your day. Let the immature talk. Let them twist your name. Let them misinterpret your silence. That's not your burden to carry. God knows your heart. He knows the truth, and in time, so will everyone else. You don't need to defend your reputation when your character speaks for you. You've learned to walk away when necessary. You've discovered that silence can protect your peace more powerfully than 1,000 arguments. But now, let's talk about what happens when you choose to stay consistent, when you keep showing up with love. Even when disrespect keeps knocking at your door, just keep showing up with love, with grace, with integrity. Keep walking the path with steady steps, and let the fruit of your life speak louder than the rumors that swirl around you. Because here's the truth: when you remain silent in the face of provocation, you are not losing the battle, you're rising above it. You're not avoiding conflict, you're commanding peace. And those who truly matter, the ones God has genuinely assigned to your life, will see it. They will recognize that your silence isn't surrender, it's wisdom. It isn't fear, it's self-control. And that will echo louder than any words you could ever say. So when the disrespect comes, and it will come, remember this: you don't have to clap back to prove your worth. You don't have to win every argument to show you're right. Sometimes the strongest, most courageous thing you can do is walk away, with your peace intact and your head held high. Let God carry what you were never meant to hold. Let your silence remind them exactly where the line was crossed. There will come a moment, a defining one, when you realize that your peace is more valuable than being understood. When you feel the weight of constantly explaining yourself become heavier than the quiet ache of being misunderstood. That is the moment you must decide. Do you keep exhausting your soul trying to explain yourself to people who never really cared to understand you? Or do you quietly step back and protect the light that God placed inside you? You see, some people don't argue to understand you. They argue to exhaust you. They don't ask questions because they care. They ask to twist your words, to find fault, to drag you into emotional wars you never signed up for. And if you don't know who you are, if you're not anchored in something deeper than their opinions, you'll get pulled in every time. You'll spend your precious energy defending your tone, your motives, your heart, until you wake up one day so drained that you can no longer hear the voice of God over the loud noise of trying to be accepted. That's not why you were created. You were not made to beg for basic respect. You were not called to chase after peace that someone else keeps breaking. Yes, there is a time to speak. Yes, there is a time to confront. But there is also a time to walk away, not in anger, not in pride, but in quiet strength, fully knowing that pouring yourself out for someone who keeps spilling it is not love. It's self-destruction. Sometimes, The most spiritual thing you can do is simply stop explaining yourself, stop trying to convince people who don't want to listen, stop offering your pearls to those who are committed to trampling them, not because you're bitter, but because your peace matters, your joy matters, the calling on your life matters. And if someone continually disrespects that, you are allowed to step back, you are allowed to let them go, even if they are family. Even if they once meant everything to you. It's not your responsibility to carry the weight of someone else's immaturity. You cannot heal someone who doesn't want to heal. You cannot help someone who only sees you as a target for blame. And when they disrespect you repeatedly, it's not your job to sit them down and beg them to treat you right. That's not humility, that's bondage. And you were set free for greater things than that. Sometimes, loving someone best means loving them from a distance. Sometimes, you have to let God work where your words have failed. Because trying to fix someone who sees you as the enemy will eventually wear you down. There is no reward in heaven for tolerating emotional abuse simply because you didn't want to look like you were giving up. Stepping back doesn't mean you've stopped loving. It means you've started honoring. Honoring the life God gave you. Honoring the boundaries that keep you whole. Honoring the peace that allows you to sleep well, pray clearly, and love with a full heart. You can't do that when you're constantly trapped in conflict. Constantly trying to prove your sincerity to people who have no interest in seeing it. Some people won't hear you until your silence speaks louder than your words, and that's okay. Let them learn through the absence of your explanations. Let them feel the weight of your distance, not to punish them, but to show them what they lost when they chose pride over peace. When they chose control over respect. Sometimes your distance becomes their wake-up call. Now, I'm not saying you should cut people off at the first sign of disrespect. No, grace must always lead the way, forgiveness must always walk hand in hand with strength. But when someone repeatedly shows you that your presence is a burden to them, believe them. Don't let hope keep you stuck in cycles of pain. Don't confuse loyalty with self-abandonment. You can forgive someone and still release them. You can bless someone and still walk away. There's a difference between being patient and being a prisoner. God has called us to bear each other's burdens, but He never asked you to carry someone else's constant dishonor. You can be full of grace and still say, enough. You can carry the love of Christ and still say, this relationship is not safe for my spirit. And when you say it, when you finally release that weight, you'll feel it, the lifting, the clearing, the quiet filling your soul is not emptiness. It's restoration. It's God reclaiming the space where chaos once lived. It's the soft whisper of heaven saying, now I can heal you. So if you're caught in cycles of disrespect, if you're constantly misunderstood, stop explaining yourself to people who only want to argue. Protect your peace. Guard your heart, and if necessary, walk away. With your dignity intact and your spirit unshaken. Your silence may just be the loudest truth they'll ever hear. There comes a time when you must rise, not with noise. Not with clenched fists, but with the quiet confidence of someone who knows that God saw it all. Every insult whispered behind your back, every harsh word dressed up as a joke, every betrayal they assumed you'd never notice. And still, you held your tongue. You chose restraint over revenge. You chose peace over pettiness. Not because you were weak, but because you knew what they didn't. You knew who was watching. God keeps records that people think no one sees. He sees not just what they did, but why they did it. He sees the pride behind their sarcasm, the envy behind their smiles, and He sees the restraint in your heart when you had every reason to fight back, but didn't. And don't ever doubt, He rewards that kind of strength. We live in a world that confuses volume with power. A world where people think the one who shouts the last word wins the argument. But real power isn't found in how loud you can be, it's found in how deeply you can trust God to fight for you. When you choose not to retaliate, when you choose to say, I won't lower myself to match their behavior, that is where your greatest victory begins. When you choose to walk away instead of fighting back, when you choose silence instead of retaliation, you're not letting them win. You're letting God work, and that changes everything. You see, choosing to stay silent in the face of disrespect doesn't mean you're surrendering. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're making room for God to step in. And when God works, He does not forget the pain they caused you. He doesn't overlook the subtle jabs they thought were harmless, the careless way they dismissed your heart as if it didn't matter. God saw all of it, every moment, every tear, every word that tried to break you. God never turns a blind eye to injustice. especially when it's his children who are being wounded. But here's something even deeper. God's justice doesn't stop at punishment. He restores, he rebuilds, he elevates, he takes the things that were broken in secret and blesses them openly. And one day, the very people who dishonored you will have to stand and watch as God honors you. But not because you got even, not because you fought for revenge. No, it will happen because you trusted God even when it hurt. You didn't curse them, you didn't tear them down, you didn't rush to expose them, you didn't gather a crowd to shame them. Instead, you brought your pain to the throne, not to the public, not to the people. And that's when you gave God something he could use. Because God can only vindicate what you choose not to avenge. Yes, I know, it's not easy. It's not easy to be kind when people are being cruel. It's not easy to hold your peace when everything inside you wants to speak, to scream, to fire back. But it's in that exact tension, that sharp pull between your urge to react and your choice to stay still, that your character is refined. You see, God's goal isn't just to bless you. He wants to build you. He wants to strengthen you from the inside out. And sometimes, he allows people to poke at you, to misunderstand you, to mock you, not to destroy you, but to develop something in you that can't be shaken. Not for them, for you. Because there will come a day when the same people who look down on you will have to look up to see what God has done in your life. The ones who laughed at you will have to live with the echo of your obedience. And it won't be because you tried to prove anything to them. It will be because you kept your face toward God. You didn't rush to defend your name. You let your life, your fruit, your faithfulness do the talking. So when someone disrespects you, whether it's a stranger, a coworker, or even your own family, remember this: your dignity is not determined by their behavior, it is revealed by your response. And when you choose to respond with wisdom, with grace, and with restraint, you set yourself apart. You send a quiet but powerful message. My identity is not shaped by how you treat me. My identity is grounded in who God says I am. There's a kind of strength that can't be taught in books. It's forged in the fire of silent endurance. It's built in the hidden places where no one else sees. It's formed when you've cried tears in secret, when you've swallowed words that could have destroyed someone, but you chose not to speak them. That's real strength, that's true victory, that's where the blessing begins. You don't need to shout to be heard, you don't need to explain yourself to be right. Just keep walking, keep doing good, keep showing up with integrity. Let them gossip, let them twist your name, let them misunderstand you. It's okay. Just make sure your heart stays clean. Because there is no defense more powerful, no shield more effective, than a life consistently marked by faithfulness. That's the life God honors. That's the life he lifts up. And when God honors you, when he opens the doors no one can close, when he exalts you in the presence of the very people who tried to tear you down, it won't be out of spite. It will be out of love. Love for the one who chose patience over pride, love for the one who chose silence over slander, love for the one who chose his will over their approval. So the next time someone disrespects you, don't react. Respond. And sometimes, the best response is no response at all. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply look up and say, God, you saw that, I leave it with you. That quiet act of surrender will speak louder than any argument ever could. That kind of silence becomes your strongest statement. Let your silence speak, let God have the final word.